Welcome everyone to the fourth and final session in our Getting Off Gas series on trades, wiring, plumbing and troubleshooting. My name is Dr. Rachel Goldlust and I'm the Sustainability Researcher here at Renew. I want to acknowledge that I live and work on the unceded lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung people of Central Victoria. I express my gratitude in the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may walk forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. This event series forms part of our Getting Off Gas toolkit, where we are supporting households to slash energy bills, cut emissions and minimise health risks associated with burning fossil fuels inside our homes. At Renew, we recognise that Australian homes must be at the centre of the renewable energy transition. That's why our toolkit is dedicated to supporting residential electrification and will provide practical, independent resources for households on replacing gas with efficient electric appliances. Our set of online resources will detail every step of the household electrification journey and include material from Renew's extensive archive, as well as handy fact sheets and case studies that detail the experiences of families who have successfully transitioned away from household gas. You can check out the toolkit at www.gettingoffgastoolkit.com, and we'll put the link in the chat for quick access. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on the fiddly practical bits, how wiring, plumbing and other trades interact with all-electric homes. There's a lot of confusion and myth-busting that needs to happen on this topic, and there's much to talk about how and when to engage skilled tradies and how to ensure that the job is done right. We're also going to talk big picture on what's happening regarding skills training, gas abolishment and the energy efficiency industry more broadly. So where do we start in these common problems facing households wanting to transition to all electric? What are the main obstacles when households talk to their plumbers, gas fitters or electricians when looking to upgrade their appliances? How can we make sure we're getting the right advice and a quality product to boot? But never fear, we are incredibly lucky to be joined by three fantastic panellists. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Ben Russell. Ben is the founder and managing director of successful electrical contracting business BREC, which has been operating for 11 years. Ben works with some of the best architects and builders in Melbourne on high-quality sustainable buildings at scale. He joined forces with several industry leaders to establish Goodbye Gas in 2022 to offer an integrated, effortless service for households to electrify their homes. Thanks for joining us, Ben. Also with us today is Holly Taylor, the Head of Strategy and Partnerships at the Energy Efficiency Council. Holly leads a team that focuses on strategic projects that build the market for energy management and facilitate the transition to an affordable and reliable energy system that underpins a prosperous net zero economy. This includes facilitating engagement with key stakeholders on strategic research, business literacy and sector development activities. Holly has worked internationally with private and public sector clients that work on innovative solutions to tackle climate change. Thanks for joining us, Holly.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
And finally, we are joined by Dan Musil, who some of you might recognise from the latest cover of Renew magazine. Dan is a secretary at Earthworker. Earthworker Energy Manufacturing Cooperative manufactures high-quality solar hot water technology in Victoria's coal-dominated Latrobe Valley. The cooperative aims to grow dignified and democratic employment in the region whilst producing important energy-saving renewable energy technology. Dan is also a PhD candidate at the Institute of Culture and Society, Western Sydney University, where he explores economic democracy and environmental justice projects across Victoria. Thanks for joining us, Dan. We acknowledge our Getting Off Gas Toolkit sponsors, notably Pure Electric, our gold sponsor, Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, our silver sponsor, and B Energy Efficient, our bronze sponsor. The Getting Off Gas Toolkit has been made possible with the support of the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation and Boundless Earth. So before we kick off with our panel discussion, and there'll be plenty of time for questions for our panellists, we want to share a quick video with you.
When we went to go look for solar installers, we looked for people who could do both, the heat pump that we were looking at as well as installing solar. So we could do it all at once and not have to call in multiple trades. So yeah, that was what our decision making was. And actually, I empowered my partner to make the decision on solar. So it wasn't something I had to worry about.
with our electric heat pump hot water system, we've had a few blackouts recently, and the only thing we've noticed is that our Wi-Fi has gone off and then come back on, and then our hot water just continues making hot water on a timer. So
that's a good point, because it's a really windy area where we live, and we get we have a parkland out the back, and so we get this big rush of wind, and so that actually did happen a couple of times. The gas went out, and it's a bit of a pain.
We had almost no problems, but actually the inverter on our solar system died. I knew about it within an hour of it happening. And that was really easy. We just called our installer. They had somebody came out in the next 2 weeks, and we got it replaced. So yeah, so far that has been great. Anything that's happened under warranty. It's only been less than 2 years since we've been all electric. And so the oldest appliances are just about 2 years old. So we haven't had any problems so far. With a reverse cycle split system, we do need to clean the filter regularly. We're not heavy users of it, so we probably haven't cleaned it monthly like is recommended, but every other month we've been cleaning it, and yeah, it's been running great.
Tradies are an interesting one, particularly at the moment. There's a real shortage of tradies. We met with a number of people when we were looking to change over, particularly the hot water was the hardest one. Yeah. And also putting in solar and our electric vehicle charger were challenging, because there's a lot of different perspectives out there. For us, we found a really great electrician at our last home, so we've continued to work with him on getting our house up to the standard we want to from an electricity point of view.
You won't have a difficulty finding a sparky to help you get off gas, but plumbers are perhaps a little bit more reluctant. Having said that, if you're replacing a gas hot water system with a heat pump, all of the plumbing fixtures for your gas hot water will work for your heat pump, and all you need to do is get a sparky to put a power point in. So really it's not that difficult to go all electric.
More and more tradies are installing split systems, installing induction cooktops, and any good electrician should be able to do those for you. And it takes the complexity out of it. You're not needing a plumber and an electrician, or vice versa. It's just one trade.
You can do the research so that you're ready before an appliance dies. You have all the information, pick a supplier, maybe talk to them, get quotes so that you're ready to go should it happen.
If you know what works you want done on your house, you should be able to go to a tradie and just say, just give them a list of the appliances that you want changed over, or the work that you want done. And if they're not willing to sit down and have a conversation with you, then you're probably looking at someone else.
So let's get started. Thanks to everyone who submitted your questions with your registration, and we hope to get to some of them throughout the session. So during our discussion, I'll be putting viewers' questions to our panel, and you can put your questions into the Zoom Q&A window at the bottom of your screen as we go, and we will endeavour to get to as many of them as we can. Please be mindful that if there are questions that are too specific or detailed, they may not be appropriate for a panel setting. So I'm going to start with you, Holly, and talk a little bit bigger picture before we get down into the nitty-gritties of wires and pipes. Can you tell us a little bit about what the service industry looks like for going all electric, and what are some of the barriers and hurdles that are being faced by the industry as a whole?
Thanks so much for asking, Rachel. It's pretty clear when we think about going all electric, we just think about electricians. But the reality is we need way more than just electricians to do this work, and we need to ensure that the electricians that are doing the work have been upskilled to do extra things. So if you think about the opportunity to go all electric, it's not just as simple as getting off gas and replacing it with an electric piece. Sometimes it's more complicated, like going from a gas hot water system to an electric heat pump hot water system. It also involves thinking about thermal performance. So thinking about insulation and draft proofing so that you can lower the demand for the need of that reverse cycle air conditioner to give you that heating and cooling. So when you think about what the services industry needs, it's not just as simple as I can call an electrician and they can do all of this for me. It's also, unfortunately, not as simple as I can just call an advisor. As I'm sure many people on this call are aware, there's a wonderful Facebook group called My Efficient Electric Home, and there are a lot of service providers on that, including home energy assessors and advisors, but we don't have anywhere near enough, and we need to ensure that these people have the right skills. So when you think about new government programs like the recently announced Clean Energy Finance Corporation's $1 billion of home energy upgrades fund, that's money that's going to be made available, and the CEFC and indeed the Commonwealth Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water are really focused on making sure that the workers, the people that do that work in our homes, know what they're doing. But there's an upskilling piece there. So we need to make sure that we have enough people that can give that initial advice. And yes, they can be electricians and plumbers, but they could also be non-trades people that just have that connection. We also then need to make sure that the electricians and plumbers know what they're doing, but we also need to make sure we have enough insulation installers so that we can reduce the demand prior to making something more efficient and more electric in terms of the services. And it's really critical that when we're thinking about rolling out big government programs like that $1 billion, that government's also thinking about, do we have enough people to do the work? And the good bit here, particularly in Victoria, is that the Victorian government has been thinking quite critically about this. So the work through Solar Victoria with getting rooftop solar on more Victorian homes, and indeed getting more heat pump hot water systems on in our homes, has led to the Victorian government funding the Plumbing Industry Climate Action Centre to roll out training to plumbers so that they are able to move gas hot water systems to electric heat pump hot water systems. There's also some funding that's been made available to the ETU in Victoria and a coalition of organisations to develop training for electricians around energy efficiency. So there's work that's being done by government. There's also work being done by a lot of other people. But the key bit is the capability is there. There's wonderful people like Ben that know what they're doing. There's really good networks, but we don't yet have the capacity. And there are a few different levers that we can pull so that we can build up capability in more people so that we can get that capacity. And the good news is that we're finally at a point where government and industry is working really well together to actually make that push.
Awesome. Dan, can you give some insight from your work in the industry around skills and upgrades and what you see as being some of the positives and maybe some of the negatives?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Look, I think Holly's covered a fair bit of ground there. Thanks for that, Holly. Earthworker Energy, we're a manufacturer in the Latrobe Valley of high-quality hot water systems. So lots of our work is around helping people get off gas in regards to their hot water at home. And a big part of that, as Holly mentioned, is going to electric heat pumps, which are a really efficient form of hot water heating. One of the challenges that I'm sure it'll come up again throughout the conversation is that for lots of people, heat pumps are kind of a new technology that they've become quite mainstream in the last 5 or 6 years. But for a long time before that, in Australia, lots of people weren't aware of them, weren't sure what they were. And some of the early generation heat pumps have had issues with being quite loud, not being particularly efficient. So there's a bit of baggage. And we find today in the plumbing trades, there's still you'll find some plumbers who are reluctant to work with heat pumps or to touch them, or just don't understand them. So that's it's very welcome. Holly mentioned the Victorian government announcements around training through the Climate Action Centre to help plumbers in particular understand and lead the electrification of homes. So that's really welcome news. I think there's a whole bunch through the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program against state government funding. There's actually a whole range of incentives at the moment for a whole range of energy efficiency measures at the home, and Ben will probably be able to talk a lot more about that as well. But I guess a word of caution if you're asking for some concerns. One thing to say is that when there's any incentive rebate programs around, there's also people whose business model is to kind of take advantage of that, and there's a whole lot of fly-by-night and questionable kind of offers that are often very well publicised. That you need to be aware of. Often, I guess a rule of thumb is if something sounds too good to be true, too cheap to be true, then that it usually is. So I'm sure that'll come up again in conversation about being aware of the quality of the work that you want to get done and the products that you might be choosing. That's one thing to be aware of. But by and large, I think that the various recent government announcements that Holly mentioned, that I mentioned just then, and the greater awareness that people have around the kind of holistic need for energy efficiency as part of getting off gas as part of a broader energy efficiency push. I think that's fantastic, and it's great that Renew is facilitating these conversations more and more.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, do you think other than that heat pumps allowed, do you think there's any other myths out there that you think is preventing, in terms of conversations that people have with their tradies and the common kind of barriers that people might come across?
Yeah, when it comes to, well, again, just on hot water initially, noise is definitely one which is easy to debunk. That is true. Some of the early heat pumps years ago, and especially the bottom end cheaper ones, were loud, and I've heard a few of those in my time. But the range of heat pumps available now, especially at the better end of the quality, you can barely hear them. Ones that we work with, and one that I'm lucky to have where I live, I have to put my face in front of the fan to know whether it's running or not. It's that quiet. Other concerns, that myths that commonly get put out there are that they're not efficient, that they're expensive to run, they're not reliable. Again, people don't say that about fridges, and heat pumps it's the same technology as the fridge you have in your house that you rarely question whether it's going to last the next day. Heat pumps are really established, long running and very common technology we deal with every day. So again, that reliability myth is a easy one to debunk. I'm sure others will come up, but the noise and reliability are two common ones. Holly, Ben probably have others to say as well.
One big thing that really consistently comes back is they're not more efficient than gas. So there is this perception in the wider community, presumably not amongst Renew's followers and the people on the call today, that gas just is more efficient than electric. But heat pumps are so much more efficient than both gas and electric resistive. We're talking about 3 to 4 times more efficient. So not just from a pure climate perspective, from a saving you bucket loads of money perspective, there's such opportunity. And when you think about something like a reverse cycle air conditioner, if you match that with thermal performance improvements, and by that I mean draft proofing and insulation, your capacity to drastically reduce your energy costs. This isn't just we need to deal with climate change. It's an equity issue that enables us to give vulnerable households cheaper access to health and comfort. And really critical that we, talk about they are super duper reliable. Yes, there has been some crap in the market. We shouldn't deny that. The great news is that one of the other things that was funded in the Australian budget that came out in May for this financial year is funding towards the GEMS Act. So that's the Greenhouse and Energy Minimum Standards Act. And they are looking at introducing minimum energy performance standards for heat pump hot water systems that don't exist in Australia. And that will weed out a lot of the crap product that has entered into the market and will enable us all to have better quality heat pump hot water systems. So it's really just thinking about pushing back on people saying, well, there's crap quality and they're not actually very efficient, and going, well, no, they actually are, which is going to save householders bucket loads of money.
Ben, I might ask you, like, aside from the cost, the prohibitive cost kind of question, I'm kind of interested in, like, what are some of the other hurdles that you've come across in your work in terms of, I'm thinking more like logistics, those kind of problems that people might face when they're looking to change out their appliances?
Yeah, there's a few. I think the most common one is people just don't know where to start. There's a lot of questions about which item do you want to do first. Do you want to do your heat pump or your cooktop, or which ones have rebates, which don't. What are good brands, things like that. I guess this leads to too much information and people just not having that clear direction about what they want to do. I think the decision fatigue can be a bit hard for a lot of people. And then I think just the daunting coordination process. Like we were saying before, that you need a plumber or a mechanical contractor or an electrician. You need all these trades to try and coordinate. Had one job recently. We were doing a heat pump, a cooktop, 2 split systems and a solar system, like all at the same time. Trying to coordinate that. We had two people in our office, coordinating that. So that takes a lot of time as well. So I think that can be daunting for a lot of people to try and coordinate multiple people.
But is it a good idea to ask someone to do the coordination work that, Goodbye Gas kind of does, which is not necessarily available to everyone, if they haven't really done it before? Like, I know it's nice to have someone else take the responsibility of managing a project for you, but how successful would that be?
Yeah, I mean that's fine, and some people do like to do that. They like to do the research themselves, and they'd like to figure out which appliance they like or what technology they might like. But I think that if you want to go get the best price or whatever, you're gonna have to speak to 2 Sparkies, 2 plumbers, 2 aircon installers, 2 solar guys. So that takes time as well. So that definitely is an option. But what we offer is that all-in-one, which is hopefully can take some of the pain out of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, to jump in. Yeah. I've just seen in the chat a couple of comments and questions around other myths and on heat pumps. Just while we're on that sort of similar topic, one is around temperature. There's a common myth again that you can't use a heat pump when the climate is too cold. Again, it's a myth. Modern heat pumps, and there's a range available. The one we work with and offer can operate and heat your hot water at air temperatures down to below zero, -10 degrees Celsius. So again, you can have them in Canberra, you can have them in the snow almost. Another one is again kind of whether it's reliable, whether they can heat enough hot water. And again, heat pumps today. There's kind of a couple of different signals about how efficient a heat pump is. There's a rating called a COP. It's how efficiently it extracts heat from the air to heat your hot water. Another telltale sign is whether there's an electric element as a backup in your heat pump. And typically, if there is, that's a sign that the heat pump doesn't actually have enough juice or enough power to heat your hot water itself. If it's relying on a sort of traditional resistive element backup, that's something to look out for. Most good heat pumps have all the power and the efficiency they need to heat your hot water, and will do it very quickly. So again, that myth about whether it's going to give you hot water when you need it is a myth.
I can tell you I had no hot water for my shower this morning. We have a heat pump, but that was because our pipes froze. And it was the first time this winter that the heat pump hasn't been able to push hot water through the pipes. So they were very frozen. So sad day for me. My question to you, Dan, actually is about we heard in the video, there's good ways that people can get prepared before they contact you. So what would you like to see from your clients, ideally, before you start to work with them?
Yeah, great question. I think it goes to a theme of conversation from all the panelists so far, and that's thinking about energy holistically, not just thinking about swapping a particular appliance, but thinking about the bigger picture of all the energy that you use at the home and the types of activities that you undertake every day, and how they can also change to reduce how much energy you use or what your needs are in terms of appliances. So, for instance, draft proofing, or thinking about the time of day you want to be running particular appliances, whether You can, like the location of a hot water system, for instance, is an important consideration. Is it located close to where you use the hot water, so you're minimising how much hot water or heat you'll be losing in transporting water from where the hot water service is to where you use the water. So I guess having a think about not just the particular appliance, but overall what they're doing at home. That's a great starting point, and it's always great to talk with customers and people who are thinking about energy across the whole house, not just a particular appliance. And I encourage people to look around. There's lots of information around. Again, the toolkit that James has been sharing in the chat is really worth a look at. And I guess, again, thinking about, and it's not always easy when finances are tight, but thinking about the trade-off between an upfront investment perhaps being higher, but the long-term savings being longer, versus a cheap and quick fix that won't necessarily give you a longer-term benefit. We'd love to see more state government, federal government support for not just incentives, but ways to fund and finance energy efficiency improvements that can be paid off over time by households at low cost, so essentially low cost or zero cost finance, that would enable that more. I think people who think, I guess, a bit more deeply about energy as a whole approach, I think are really welcome customers for ours, and I'd encourage people to do that as a starting point.
And Holly, we heard from, Ben before about, the one-stop shop idea. Is there, moves afoot on a bigger picture to have, more of that, whether it's from private or public or state, to have more sort of centralised services so people can get reliable information? Aside from Renew.
Aside from Renew, there's definitely moves afoot. So there's an organisation called Race for 2030. Race stands for Reliable, Affordable, Clean Energy. And Race for 2030 is a cooperative research centre. For those of you that aren't familiar, cooperative research centres are these organisations that exist for a 10-year period that are co-funded by the Commonwealth Government and industry. And industry is a mix between actual industry, state governments, and universities. So it's a cooperative research centre where basically everyone gets involved and everybody puts money in, and then universities and research institutions like CSIRO work with industry to deliver projects. RACE has just kicked off a 3-year program called Energy Upgrades for Australian Homes. And this is basically looking at how on earth can we get this done. So RACE put out a piece of research around retrofitting 1 million plus homes about 18 months ago. And this is the next step as part of that. So RACE is doing a bit of work around, well, how can we develop an idea of a one-stop shop? And this is also being explored by other organisations, including the Energy Efficiency Council, the Green Building Council, Renew. There's a bunch of us that are having that conversation together, and we'll work with RACE and indeed with government, because the Commonwealth Government and the states and territories are all involved in this big, giant research project. So there have been effective one-stop shops in other countries, most notably probably Ireland, where basically the government runs a one-stop shop opportunity, and there are multiple suppliers like Ben's organisation that sit within that government one-stop shop framework. And it enables an individual household to call one place and say, well, I want to improve the thermal performance and efficiently electrify my home. What are all the things I need to do? And it connects people with all the different trades that they need, with all the different suppliers of the kit that they need, with the home energy assessors that they need up front. And it gives them that opportunity to just get things done a hell of a lot more easily. The really good news is, because the Commonwealth Government also in the budget that was released in May put a bit of money towards basically expanding the NatHERS, or the National Home Energy Rating System, NatHERS. I was about to go into neighbours land. Sorry, guys. Expanding NatHERS so that it has a rating for existing homes. So NatHERS exists for all new builds, but it doesn't yet exist for existing buildings. And it's really critical that we have a home energy rating for existing buildings, because it enables us to bring things in like minimum ratings for rental properties as they have somewhat done in the ACT with minimum standards for ceiling insulation. But you overall want to do that. And that piece of work that, tens of millions of dollars, not bucket loads of money, has gone into bolstering that team at the Commonwealth level so they can think about, well, how can we make sure that we've got good ratings and good disclosure? And that would then underpin any such program that's giving you a one-stop shop. So there is a big piece of work that's being done about how can we properly set that up in the next few years. Now, I appreciate plenty of people want to get stuff done now and not wait for that government-backed piece. So it's critical to think about the opportunity of organisations like Goodbye Gas, and they're not the only organisation that's doing this. There are a bucket load out there that you can just call one place and they will connect you with all of the relevant people. And that's going to make everyone's life easier. By the same token, I appreciate I'm pushing a Facebook group right now, but the My Efficient Electric Home is actually a super duper useful resource. It's a super useful resource for people that just want to do some of the work themselves, but it's got a lot of different actual tradies and service providers and people that have already gone through the experience. Like, you can bet your bottom dollar every single person that was on the video that you showed at the start of the session, Rachel, they would all be on this Facebook group. And it's just a really good opportunity to learn, and it's giving you a light touch one-stop shop. But the critical bit is, in the same way that Boundless Earth has given Renew some funding to do this work and is giving the Energy Efficiency Council some funding to do some skills mapping work, they've also given some funding to RACE as part of that big jumbo project to actually get up a digital public access one-stop shop where they are going to put multiple different providers and multiple different suppliers. So this stuff is coming. It's just maybe not moving as quickly as what we would like. But in the meantime, there are resources that you can use. And I cannot stress enough, My Efficient Electric Home is a great place to start.
So I might just go from that meta to sort of the nuts and bolts, and I might ask you, Ben, about like tickets and qualifications, and can you sort of maybe run through what people are kind of allowed and not allowed? What can people do? What can different tradies do? And what should they be doing? And how do they upskill themselves?
So simply put, electricians and plumbers are licensed trades in every single state and territory. So that means you actually need to have someone in your house that has the requisite trade, which could be a Cert 3 or a Cert 4 in electrotechnology or in plumbing. And if you're thinking about air conditioning, it's in air conditioning, it's air conditioning and refrigeration mechanic. These are specific trades that people have done. A key bit that people often get stuck on is that when you're thinking about changing over to a reverse cycle air conditioner, it's very simple. You need to call a Frigie. A Frigie does that work. They have equivalent skills to what an electrician has, but they just work in air conditioning and refrigeration because they also have knowledge and skills around refrigerants. And so they are able to safely put that into your home. When you're dealing with hot water systems, and particularly the move from a gas hot water system to a heat pump hot water system, a standard electrician or plumber isn't able to do the work by themselves. However, an electrician or a plumber can get a few additional tickets, I'm talking about specific units, to give them that skill, or they could work closely with a plumber or an electrician depending on what they are to do that work. And there's an interesting question in the chat basically saying, well, if you need to get your heat pump hot water system maintained, who do you call? The majority of the time you will be calling the electrician because the maintenance isn't on the tank. The maintenance is on the actual unit, which is also existing for reverse cycle air conditioner. And that needs an electrician to look at it, whereas gas has historically needed plumbing. This doesn't mean that plumbers are all going to lose their jobs, because we can upskill the plumbers to do the work around converting from gas to electric. And indeed, the Plumbing Industry Climate Action Centre has been doing that work and working very closely with the unions to ensure that we are making sure that plumbers continue to have a job and continue to be involved in the transition.
Have you got anything to add to that, Ben?
No, not really. That was well said. But yeah, I'd say if your hot water system did break down your heat pump, I'd call a plumber, not a Sparky, because we wouldn't do that.
Fair enough. And Dan, do you have any?
No, just echoing that you do want to make sure you've got licensed tradespeople, so electricians and plumbers, or if a fridge is needed to help fix a reverse cycle aircon or a heat pump. And there's for plumbers in Victoria, plumbers have to be registered and licensed with the Victorian Building Authority. Both electricians and plumbers will need to issue a compliance certificate for any works they've done. So making sure you can just check with people beforehand, double check that they'll be giving you a compliance certificate. You want to make sure that your work's done by people who are licensed and skilled and experienced to do the work. Yep.
And is that the same with cooktops? Can you run us through the who's required to do the work of like cutting gas and or installing induction as those separate trades?
You need an electrician to do the cooktop. We'd ideally get the plumber there at the same time just to disconnect the existing gas cooktop and to cap that. And then, an electrician would come in and wire a new circuit for that and then connect all that up and test it.
And is there like a way for, I know we've talked about like good quality products, but in terms of like, a lot of people are going to take at face value what they get told. And that's how a lot of us, that's the problem with us in trying to empower consumers. But how do you find out if your tradie is not legit? Like what can people do if they think they're not really getting told the right information, or they're getting sold a product that's not right for them?
It's a good point. I just seek some other options, I guess. I mean, if you don't know or haven't worked with an electrician previously, I don't know. I think you'd just have to get a couple of options, I reckon. But they all should show their license as well. So you've obviously got to make sure they do have their license. I think that would be it.
Yeah, I think following that up, I think making sure asking for a license number can be an important step. Checking that the license holder is doing the work or supervising the work. Often very legitimately, apprentices or people working with a licensed plumber or electrician will do a fair bit of the work that'll be supervised or checked off by the licensed plumber or electrician. But you want to make sure that it's not some random who's doing your work and some other random license holder who's signing off. And there's a few telltale signs that might get you kind of make you a bit wary. Things like, people door-to-door sales cold calling who are saying, look, the deal runs out today, you need to make the decision now. People who try to rush your decision making, I'd be a little bit wary of. People who can offer you a wonderful deal, but only this minute, often are signs that would raise my concerns. So I think generally, unless you've got an emergency hot water replacement or a household appliance emergency, I'd be taking a bit of time to and don't let your decision making be rushed by a sales push. That'd be extra advice from me.
Ben and Dan may completely disagree with me on this. So I do work for an industry association, but I'd like to highlight that industry association has both manufacturers and installers as members. But one thing that can be really useful, and you do need to do this in advance, is searching out for the manufacturers. So who's got good quality product? Now that's much easier for a reverse cycle air conditioner because there is minimum energy performance. There are minimum energy performance standards, and indeed there's also star ratings for them. Far more difficult for something like a heat pump hot water system because there aren't those minimum standards. But if you are going through the manufacturers have a bunch of different installers that they work with, and they're very much focused on ensuring that those electricians and those plumbers do a good job so that their product gets a good name. So it gives you that extra sense of security. So if you don't have a way to, know someone that knows someone, or can't see a bucket load of really good reviews, that can give you a much greater sense of surety. It doesn't mean that there aren't other pathways forward, but it can be a lot simpler to go, well, I'm going to look at the 10 different hot water providers and work out which ones are the best, and then contact them and then go through their recommended installers as a pathway forward. And that generally will get you a really good outcome because those manufacturers are so focused on people having positive experiences with their products.
I think it's a great point, Holly. And just to add to that, when you can, and it is hard with lots of renewable energy technology, but when you can, try and buy local, buy something that's made locally. Not only do you support local manufacturing sector and job creation there, but you've got someone who you can go and visit or ring up if you have a question or you have an issue that needs resolving. So yeah, absolutely, try and contact manufacturers when you can.
And we've got, two pretty big topics that I want to cover before we get to the Q&A. And one of them is gas abolishment, and the other one is about phase power. So I don't know who wants to take the abolishment question or the phase power question, but it is a very common myth, and people are often asking questions. Let's look at three-phase power. How do people know if they need to update their circuitry or their power boards? And, I've heard differing information around that.
Yeah, I can take that. I get asked that question probably the most. And yeah, I guess an upgrade to three-phase for the average house is very rare. So the most common house would have a 63 amp supply, which is a single phase supply. And if you were to use that full amount, I'll try to explain it clearly. If you were to use that full amount at any one time, it works out to be a roughly 15,000 watts, which is a lot of power. And so when we're calculating the demand of a house, we can assume that you're not going to be using everything at full capacity all at the same time. So you're not going to have your cooktop 4 burners on 10, your oven on 260, all those things aren't going to be on. So we can kind of diversify that a bit. So just to further that point, I guess, is that, we've done hundreds of jobs adding in cooktops and heat pumps and things like that, and we haven't needed to, coordinate a three-phase upgrade yet. But just in saying that, obviously every house is different. So yeah, each house does need to be assessed on its own. And yeah, an electrician would do that assessment.
I feel like we heard in the last session on solar, a lot of people have three-phase for certain reverse cycles. Is that correct?
Reverse cycle aircon, yeah, I mean they do exist, yeah. Of course they exist, yeah. I mean you can get single phase ones as well, which are the most common. But yeah, I mean if you've got a three-phase connection already, then a three-phase air conditioner might make sense. But it's not something that you would need to do if you were going to electrify your house, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the key areas that seems to have a lot of information flying around, and there doesn't seem to be a reliable source of, definitive answers to that one. Does anyone else want to add anything on the phase power question?
I think that question is definitely for an electrician. It's best to just leave.
It's hard to explain too. It's hard to explain to people, who are in layman's terms, simply. But yeah, that's my best shot.
No, that's awesome. So I guess the last topic, and we've only got 5 minutes left before I want to open for Q&A. So if you do have questions that you want to put, please put it into the Q&A. So the last question is about abolishment, and I have been sort of deliberately teasing the audience for 4 weeks now and saying that we would deal with this question in the last session, so everyone had to tune in to be able to listen to it. So does someone want to speak to the situation? Maybe Dan, do you want to talk to the situation in Victoria, and then we can maybe speak a little bit more broadly about what from a householder's perspective, what people should expect and what is reasonable, and then also what is changing in the abolishment versus disconnection question.
Okay, yep, I'll have a crack, and would love others to help me out. I mean, people would be aware that the Victorian government recently announced that mandatory new gas connections for new build houses are being scrapped. In fact, you won't have gas connections at all, which is a great step. And there are various incentives for in the form of rebates for people to swap out various gas appliances for electric ones. The Victorian government also recently announced that soon you'll be able to receive an extra sort of relatively small rebate for replacing a gas hot water system with a heat pump hot water system. Previously, you couldn't get that incentive. for most systems, they're not quite available yet, but in a few months' time they will be. So that's good news. So I think there's recent developments that are very promising, and the awareness, the conversation about getting off gas is moving to a much bigger level, which is fantastic. I think it would be great to see that matched, that general movement matched at the scale of the gas extraction industry as well, which, there's still big proposals to be pumping gas out of the Beetaloo Basin and other parts of Australia. And that's not just an issue for climate change. We don't want to be digging up or pumping out and burning more gas, but also in terms of our renewable energy transition. Colin Long from Victorian Trades Hall and from Earthworker pointed out just the other day that investing in big gas extraction projects like that, and often they have state and various federal government supports, not only bad for the climate, but it's actually taking workers away from other important projects we need to be doing. Those building big new gas projects or gas plants. It's not a zero-sum game. You're actually taking people away from, working in the renewable energy sector or building the alternative infrastructure that we need. So I guess that's a quick response.
Sure. I might have misfired that question as well, because I was talking more on a individual household level in terms of disconnection. But I appreciate the bigger picture on gas. Holly, do you want to speak to some of the things that are changing in Victoria in terms of caps and fees?
So I think the high level piece here is it's actually not particularly clear what's happening in existing homes. So we know what's happening with new homes in Victoria. They won't be connected to gas from 2024. This is already happening in the ACT. Whilst we have had New South Wales say we're not doing that, at some point they will do that. There's no ifs, buts or maybes about it. The most efficient, the most productive opportunity for us to decarbonise, and just remember, every state and territory committed to net zero before the Commonwealth government did, is to electrify our buildings, particularly our freestanding homes. There's no reason for freestanding homes to be on gas, even once we have cost-effective green hydrogen, whenever we have that. What we do have right now is cost-effective renewable energy, and we can use less of it by being more efficient. So in that existing home space, there is that conversation between, do we just disconnect or do we completely abolish? And there's a big difference in the cost. Like, you're talking about $50 to $100 to disconnect, which will prevent you from paying network charges, up to an additional, often around $1,000 to fully abolish. Now, Ben's in a much better position than me to talk about why it's actually useful to fully disconnect. And when I say fully disconnect, I mean abolish, which really means removing the pipework between the gas network and the home. Whereas a disconnection is, we've just turned it off. We know you're no longer using it. The critical bit here to note before Ben can go into a bit of detail around why it's useful to properly abolish is we want to make sure that we are not, for lack of a better term, screwing over vulnerable households, because we could get to a situation where we have put rooftop solar on middle class and upper middle class people's homes, and they've all electrified, and then the people that are on both the electricity grid and the gas grid are covering all of those network costs. So really critically, governments are aware. This is something that is coming up time and time again at the state level, at the national level, even though it is a state responsibility to think about how can we ensure that we are not leaving the burdens of the network on the most vulnerable. And I really want to stress this. The cost of electricity is going down. The cost of gas is just slowly continuing to increase. But electricity costs are going down. Generation costs, network costs are just going to go up. And they're going to go up because we need to build more networks. We're moving from a linear electricity system to a completely disaggregated network. Like it's like a spider web, and it's crazy. That needs more networks, and that means prices will go up. So it's critical thinking about both gas and electricity networks, that governments think about a pathway forward that doesn't leave the most vulnerable covering all those costs. And the good news is government is thinking about that. But if you are one of those people that's fortunate enough to own your own home and is able to do that work, you should do it. You should just make sure you're having active conversations with your local members about how we shouldn't stuff over the most vulnerable. So, Ben, would you mind if I handballed to you, hopefully not a pass, for you to explain why we should abolish rather than just disconnect?
No, that's true. Yeah, all really great points there. Yeah, so once we've, we've got a home, we've removed all the gas appliances, we're left with two options. And I guess one is, you can cap the gas at the meter, which again is relatively cheap, or you can abolish the meter, which is to get rid of it and disconnect it from the street. So yeah, that they were charging about $1,000, some retailers, for that abolishment, and the Australian Energy Regulator has now put a cap on that. So they have capped it at $220. That was I think it was from July this year. So if it's any more than that, then you'll need to, I don't know, call the AER and make a complaint, I would say. But yeah, I mean, for us, I think the abolishment is a really good kind of piece in the whole getting rid of gas kind of story. You've got that, that real disconnection from the street, and I think that just puts a message out there to people that this is coming, and this is the way that it's going to be.
And is that cap national or is that Victorian?
I think it's national. Yeah, it's the Australian Energy Regulator. So when we're only in Victoria, but I think it is national. Yeah,
it's definitely national. So it's hitting off everyone, which is good news.
Great news.
It is, and so theoretically, if it came in last month, then it should have filtered down through the service providers. So you shouldn't be seeing $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever some people have talked about.
No, not anymore. No. Yeah. So I'd say call the AER if that was the case.
Right. So there is cause. So thinking from a consumer point of view, there is cause for people to question some of the pricing that they might be seeing.
Yeah. And it's not just the AER, Absolutely. Like the actual suit, like, yes, you can complain to the AER, but the ACCC, which is the Australian Consumer Watchdog. I can never remember what all three of the C's stand for. There's a consumer and a commission. It's the watchdog for consumers, and they will take these complaints. And they've been pretty good over the years at when, average everyday Australians have been complaining about this, that, or whatever. If there's enough complaints, they do research on it. And this is how we've led to a lot of really interesting pieces of work around capping specific costs in the energy space to prevent people from rorting. But the ACCC does that not just for energy prices, they do it for everything. So would really echo what Ben said of, if someone's trying to charge you more than that cap, go to the AER, but also go to the ACCC. And enough complaints go into the ACCC, it becomes big news.
And there has been a fair bit of press about it in the last, 3 or 4 months. So it's definitely something that will become a lot harder for them to be able to do. But there's a lot of education, I think, that needs to happen in the space to get people aware of those options. I mean, I've read stuff about, that they can charge depending on how far away you are from the, like how much digging has to actually happen. Like, is that commensurate? Like, or is that just something that they have to wear the cost? Like, if you're talking about 5 meters versus 50 meters.
Yeah, I think they just they have to dig up the connection at the street side. So when I did it at my house, like I only paid $90, I think, where my gas connection was to have it disconnected. But they had a full digger, road people, 3 people. Like there was about 5 or 6 people there doing it, and I'm like, that's good value for $90. But yeah, it's something that I think should definitely be done.
That's wild. So that does mean that they're compensating for all of that. That's the retailer, or is that the energy provider who's doing that work?
It's the gas network that has the cost. Yeah, the retailer is just a kind of middle person between that, so they just pass that cost on.
Yeah, you can't really speak to an electrician for $90, can you?
No, you're right.
So I'm going to go to questions unless you great panelists have seen any questions in the chat that you're interested in picking up on or any topics that we haven't really covered.
I think I just want to address one comment because someone has said they don't know what planet I'm on, which number one isn't the nicest thing to say. Number two, I just, being kind is useful for everyone. But number two, what I said is generation costs are going down, network costs are going up. So our energy bill is made up of both generation and network costs. Renewable power generation is much, much cheaper than coal and gas generation. Coal and gas is actual commodities that we are getting from an international market. They're going up in value. The good news is Australia is actually moving off coal-fired power plants much more quickly than a lot of other countries because a lot of our coal-fired power plants are due to be retired in the next decade. Critically, what that means is because renewable generation is so much cheaper than coal and gas generation, we're replacing that coal and gas with renewables and with storage. So that means the generation component of your bill is going to go down, but the network cost isn't. So yes, I'm not living in a crazy loony bin. My electricity bill's going up like crazy as well. I also rent in a leaky, painful home. So my electricity bill is nutty, but the key bit here is when you're thinking about how can we make sure that we're reducing our overall costs, well, let's do as many things as possible behind the meter so you can also reduce your network costs.
Yeah, good point. I was going to ask about apartments. We had a chat at our launch, Ben, actually, about what people can do, like in not just big multi-unit developments, but smaller units, older units who might want to share heat pumps or sources like that. Is that something that's possible? Can you split resources between units when it comes to hot water particularly?
Yes, you can if there's new builds, yes, and you've got the infrastructure, I think that's okay. So yeah, when I was living in a Nightingale apartment and we all had a shared hot water service on the top and then it kind of filtered down to all the apartments. But if you're looking at retrofitting, yeah, it is a hard one if there is no space for heat pumps. And yeah, honestly, I think it's still something that we're trying to fine tune. In my opinion, there is no single phase instant hot water unit that could replace a gas one for apartments. There are 3-phase ones that work, but as we know, not everyone has that connection. But yeah, I think, hopefully technology will catch up that, there will be a single phase unit that doesn't, require a 60 amp connection to run it. But yeah, not yet. It's still a very tricky one.
Just to follow up that, thanks, Ben. I think part of the innovation that can happen here that is happening in some cases or needs to happen is not just technical. Yes, like in some cases we need different kinds of technologies that can deliver hot water to 60 units in an apartment block, but also for smaller units, like going to your question, there are definite opportunities in hot water to be sharing resources, and it requires, I guess, a social innovation of people cooperating and setting up a system where they're happy to split the bill or run pipes. That's possible. When it comes to sharing electrical energy, unfortunately, that is a lot more difficult now because of the way that our networks are run and operate. And there's been various trials, mostly abandoned in Victoria, around trying to set up microgrids and allowing people to share electricity across their kind of property boundaries. And then in case of apartment, that would be between units or whatever. And unfortunately, that's still, there's kind of governance, political reasons why that can't happen. It's very hard to you can't sort of send power from one house to your neighbour at the moment. It's got to go through the network and you've got to pay the retailer to do that, basically, or pay the network to do that. So there's work to be done there, but that's kind of legislative and changing how our networks operate, distribution operates. But in terms of other ways to share, I think it would be great to see more and more people experimenting with cooperating with their neighbours and exploring communal ways of helping each other save energy or pool resources, pool appliances. I think there's some wonderful opportunities there.
Yeah, it's true. We don't think about it because we think about, we've talked a lot in this series about not looking at these things as costs, but looking at them as investments. But we haven't really looked at the idea of maybe, different configurations and different ways that we can look at, sharing those investments amongst, groups of people or collectives, I guess. I'm just imagining, I don't know, there's, houses that have taken down their fences, for example. Like, is there a way that you could, put a couple of heat pumps that could then run to multiple houses if you did it like that? Is that feasible?
Again, for the hot water, it's much more possible. You don't need permission to send water from one place to another. So it'd be wonderful to see more and more people experimenting with those kinds of communal efforts to help each other out and reduce energy. If you're talking about swapping, charging your battery from someone's PV panels next door, that's a bit more difficult at the moment because of the way the rules are govern how electricity is sent around. But for hot water, if you're getting maybe some hand tools to help improve the thermal performance of your house, do some draft proofing, then getting that with your neighbours and doing it as a group instead of everyone going out and doing things individually. I think there's real opportunities there, and I'd love to see more people looking at those kind of collective projects, pooling of resources, pooling of knowledge. And I guess one example is was talked about a lot, the My Energy Efficient Electric Efficient Home Facebook page is a great example of people sharing resources and sharing information and helping each other out. I think there's more and more opportunities to do that.
Can you do bulk buys for hot water services and or other appliances like you can with solar?
Well, speaking from Earthworker, we've run a number of community bulk buys with different organisations, and if there are people out there who want to talk to us about that, then we're always happy to talk about. We're a cooperative and we're a project of cooperatives. We love to support economic cooperation, and we'd love to talk to community groups about that. I'm sure Ben would be happy to talk about that. Well, I'll let Ben talk about that too.
There's also a couple of bigger providers these days that are doing effectively what they're calling behind the meter virtual power plants. So thinking about opportunities for putting rooftop solar on, say, apartment buildings and sharing that generation capacity amongst all of the apartments. So there is quite a lot of new innovative technological solutions that are coming through the market, and enabling more of those community spirited initiatives are actually getting into the mainstream, which is great to see.
And that just reminds me, one other, I guess, following on this theme, your way of participating in the kind of energy transition doesn't always have to be just in physically buying or changing appliances. Yeah. One of the projects Earthworker is involved in is CoPower. It's a cooperative electricity retailer. It's non-for-profit. It's democratically run, and it doesn't profit from selling more electricity to its customers. Its business model is different, so that it doesn't create that incentive that most big retailers have of selling you more and more electricity. I guess that's one way to participate, by becoming a customer member of CoPower, which is has been set up by a whole bunch of unions, community groups, environment groups. You also get the chance then to democratically decide what happens to any surplus or profit made by the co-op through that retailing of electricity. So I guess that's another example of a collective alternative project that is enabling you to participate in the kind of energy transition in a way that's not just getting a product or doing something at your own house.
Awesome. And is that they're just Victorian? Is that how that works?
No, CoPower is an electricity retailer that operates around Australia now. Yep.
Oh, cool. So everyone can access.
Yep. I'll post it in the chat.
So there's a question from Scott that was asking about, if you were wanting to get off gas as part of a major reno, can you rely on a good builder to select the right tradespeople? Does anyone want to speak to that?
The great news here is that master builders, like there's master plumbers and there's master electricians as well. These are individuals with trades that are committed to delivering at a higher standard. So they join effectively a professional association. These aren't unions. The unions are separate. They are people that are trying to be the best. And master master builders really is focusing on effectively being the project manager for building. So if you get yourself a good builder, they should be in a very good position to say, yep, I can line up the electrician, the plumber, the insulation installer, the carpenter, et cetera, et cetera. And a safe place to go to start is to go to your local master builders chapter. And there's individual chapters in all of the states and territories across Australia.
So there is a question here from Derek that has asked about gas boosted solar hot water. I know that we've been quite specific when we've talked about appliances thus far. So what would you suggest what to do to go electric, because the solar hot water is so efficient that he basically turns his gas off between September and April every year? What would you suggest?
Yeah, it's an interesting debate that's sort of still pretty live at the moment about the most electric efficient way to heat your hot water, whether you go more traditional rooftop solar hot water, like you've got evacuated tubes on the roof, which, collect sunlight and heat your hot water, like a thermal power station, direct sunlight, or a heat pump, which we've been talking about. Rough figures are that it's the efficiency is pretty similar now. A good heat pump is pretty similar to a good high-performing evacuated tube solar hot water system. And most of the year, even down in Melbourne, those evacuated tube systems, if they're a good quality one, you won't need any backup boosting, but there will be months in the colder parts of the year when you do need boosting. And so in your situation, if you're currently boosting yours with gas and you feel like your evacuated tubes, your solar hot water is still really efficient, then you can swap out the tank part of that unit with an electric boosted tank. That would be one option. And then you've got solar hot water that just has an electric boost for those times when you don't get enough sunlight, or you go heat pump. The kind of trade-off you have to think about there, and it seems that at the moment one argument seems to be mostly winning, is that you've only got so much roof space, and the trade-off is, do I want to have roof space used for my solar hot water collectors, which only heat hot water, or do I want to, if I'm lucky enough to own my house and have the money to do so, put solar PV on the roof, which I can then run my hot water heat pump off, but run other appliances off too. So that seems to be the kind of argument that seems to be most commonly made is, no, it's better off just putting all PV on the roof. Then I have an all-electric home. I can run my extra efficient heat pump hot water system and everything else that I need off the PV. And the counter argument, which is a bit less popular, is one I'd prefer to keep my solar hot water because I prefer that technology. There's I don't have to worry about the compressor or the components of the heat pump that might scare me. I can go that way. So I guess there are two options: change your solar hot water to an electric boosted solar hot water, or get a heat pump. But Ben might have some more to think about too.
Yeah, exactly as you said. Yeah, I mean, I think the technology is pretty similar. The efficiencies are very similar, but we'd say the best setup would be a heat pump, on the side of your house, and then save the room for solar, and just put as much solar on as you can. That would be our preferred option for sure.
What about the lifespan of those two relative technologies, though? Doesn't evacuated solar last forever?
I'm not sure. We don't do any of the solar hot waters, so I can't comment on the lifespan at all. Sorry.
Like everything, it depends on the quality of the product you buy. So trying to reinforce that, people do some research about that, and looking at the warranty offered for each product is a really good, simple telltale sign about how reliable it might be. There's arguments each way. Evacuated tubes, it's kind of simple. In some ways, the sun hits the tubes and heats your hot water, and you just run it through there and into your storage tank. So some people will say, there's less moving parts, there's less that can go wrong with old school solar hot water compared to a heat pump. But if you've got older flat panel solar hot water, particularly down here in Melbourne, it's not as efficient as evacuated tubes. You've got to keep it clean. You've got to make sure that that just like your solar PV panels, that it's not being blocked by dust, that you're collecting as much solar energy as you can. And although they're rare, in a change of climate, maybe there's a risk that large hailstorms are more frequent, in which case you can, your panels can get damaged. So there's kind of arguments each way. But, a good evacuated tube solar hot water system, you can get a 15-year warranty on. Similarly, good heat pump system, you can get long warranties as well. So, I don't know if there's conclusive argument either way on that question, Rachel.
No, and I'm sure it's something that the Renew audience probably already has a position on in a lot of cases anyway, regardless of what they're getting told. So I'm conscious of the time, and I'm conscious that we all want to get out early tonight. So I'm going to ask you all it's been a great conversation. I'm going to ask you for your one final takeaway. Just the one thing you'd like to leave the audience with in terms of this topic about trades and troubleshooting. So I'll start with you, Holly.
My one takeaway is pretty simple. If you're looking to find good suppliers, go to trusted sources. There are professional associations, there are industry associations. They vet the people and the organisations that are involved. The opportunity to go through those networks to make sure that you're getting good quality products and good quality suppliers is your best opportunity. So I would encourage you to go to organisations like Master Plumbers, like Master Electricians, like Master Builders, like the Energy Efficiency Council to work out what are good products and who are good suppliers. There are plenty more out there, but there are so many opportunities. So that's a simple way to cut through. And again, that one final plug, My Efficient Electric Home is also an easy way to work out who are some good suppliers, because people love chatting and giving the thumbs up to the good ones.
It is. It's become a little bit of a collective marketplace, gossip center. And I guess it's a good place for tradies to join also if they want to get the kind of clients and get into the kind of networks that they'd like to get into if they aren't already connected. Ben, do you want to give us your final takeaway? Thanks, Holly.
I'd say just trying to, households just have an electrification plan, I think is super important. Set your goals and just try and chip away at that. So we say, progress over perfection. So set your goals and just do one item at a time. You don't have to do everything at once, and just one at a time over a couple of years is great.
Awesome. Dan?
Yeah, so much to say, but to try and summarise, look for quality, look for trusted sources, and when you can, make sure you're supporting local. Look to local trusted sources of information, local sources of local service providers, and when you can, locally made products.
Awesome. I love that as a final message, because I think that's super important as well. All right. Thank you so much, panelists. We're going to let you go. And that brings us to the end of our session tonight. And a huge thanks to all of you for giving us your time and your expertise. We want to thank our sponsors, Pure Electric, the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, and Be Energy Efficient. We are also very grateful to our funders, the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation and Boundless Earth. We hope you enjoyed our Getting Off Gas series. We'll be uploading all of the sessions, if you've missed them, to the Renew YouTube channel over the coming week. The link is in the chat, and please share to anyone who wasn't able to attend this or any of the previous sessions. Please subscribe to the channel to ensure you get a notification when we upload our videos. At Renew, we rely on our wonderful sponsors to support the transition to a more sustainable Australia. If you have found our series useful, we hope you will consider gifting a tax-deductible donation. No amount is too small. If you're interested in donating, you can do so by following the link or giving us a call during business hours. Thank you for joining us.